The Warlock's Hairy Heart. There once was a handsome, rich, and talented young warlock who observed that his friends grew foolish when they fell in love, gambling and preening, losing their appetites and their dignity. The young warlock resolved never to fall prey to such weakness and employed dark arts to ensure his immunity. Unaware of his secret, the warlock's family laughed at him to so aloof and cold. All will change, he prophesied, and when a maid catches his fancy. But the young warlock's fancy remained untouched, though many a maiden was intrigued by his haughty mien and employed the most subtle arts to please him. No one succeeded in touching his heart. The warlock gloried in his indifference and the sagacity that had produced it. The first freshness of youth waned, and the warlock's peers began to wed and then bring forth children. Their hearts must be husks, he sneered inwardly, as he observed the antics of the young parents around him, shriveled by their demands of these mewling offspring. And once again he congratulated himself upon the wisdom of his early choice. In due course, the warlock's aged parents died. Their son did not mourn them. On the contrary, he considered himself blessed by their demise. Now he reigned alone in their castle, having transferred his greatest treasure to the deepest dungeon. He gave himself over to a life of ease and plenty. He'd comfort the only aim of his many servants. The warlock was sure that he must be an object of immense envy to all those who beheld his splendor and untroubled solitude. Fierce were his anger and chagrin. Therefore, when he overheard two of his lackeys discussing their matter one day, the first servant expressed pity for the warlock, who, with all his wealth and power, was yet beloved by nobody. But his companion jeered, asking why a man with such gold and partial castle to his name be unable to attract a wife. Their words dealt dreadful blows to the listening's warlock pride. He resolved at once to take a wife, and that she should be a wife superior to all others. She would possess astounding beauty, exciting envy and desire in every man who beheld her. She would spring from magical lineage, so that their offspring would inherit outstanding magical gifts, and she would have wealth at least equal to his own, so that his comfortable existence would be assured, in spite of additions to his household. It might have taken the warlock 50 years to find such a woman, yet it happened so the very day after he decided to seek her. A maiden answering his every wish arrived at the neighborhood to visit her kinsfolk. She was a witch of prodigious skill and possessed of much gold. Her beauty was such it tugged on the heart of every man who set eyes on her, of every man, that is, except one. The warlock's heart felt nothing at all. Nevertheless, she was the prize he sought, so he began to pay her court. All who noticed the warlock's change in manners were amazed, and told the maiden that she had succeeded where 100 have failed. The young woman herself was both fascinated and repelled by the warlock's attention. She sensed the coldness that lay behind the warmth of his flattery, and had never met a man so strange and remote. Her kinsfolk, however, deemed theirs a most suitable match, and eager to promote it, accepted the warlock's invitation to a great feast in the maiden's honor. The table was laden with silver and gold, bearing the finest wines and the most scrumptious foods. Minstrels strummed on the silk-stringed lutes and sang of a love their master had never felt. The maiden sat upon a throne beside the warlock, who spoke low, employing words of tenderness that he had stolen from the poets, without any idea of their true meaning. The maiden listened, puzzled, and finally replied, "You speak well, warlock, and I would be delighted by your attentions if only I thought you had a heart." The warlock smiled and told her that she not need fear on that score. Bidding her follow, he led her from the feast and down to the locked dungeon where he kept his greatest treasure. Here, in an enchanted casket, was the warlock's beating heart. Long since disconnected from eyes, ears, and fingers, it had never fallen prey to beauty, nor to a magical voice. To the feel of silken skin, the maiden was terrified at the sight of it, for the heart had shrunken and covered in long black hair. "Oh, what have you done?" she lamented. "Put it back where it belongs, I beseech you." Seeing that this was necessarily to please her, the warlock drew his wand, unlocked the crystal casket, sliced open his own breast, and replaced the hairy heart in the empty cavity where it once had occupied. "Now you are healed, and you will know true love," cried the maiden, and she embraced him. The touch of her soft white arms, the sound of her breath in his ear, the scent of her heavy gold hair, all pierced the newly awakened heart like spears. But it had grown strange during its long exile, blind and savage to the darkness to which it had been condemned, and its appetites have grown powerful and perverse. The guests at the feast had noticed the absence of their host and the maiden. At first untroubled, they grew anxious as the hours passed, and finally began to search the castle. They found the dungeon at last, and the most dreadful sight awaited them there. The maiden lay dead upon the floor, her breast cut open, and beside her crouched the mad warlock, holding in one bloody hand a great, smooth, shining scarlet heart, which he had licked and stroked, vowing to exchange it for his own. In the other hand he held his wand, trying to coax from his own chest the shriveled, hairy heart. But the hairy heart was stronger than he was, and refused to relinquish its hold upon the senses or return to the coffin in which it had been locked away. Before the horror-struck eyes of the guest, the warlock cast aside his wand and seized a silver dagger. Vowing never to be mastered by his own heart, he hacked it from his chest. For one moment the warlock knelt in triumph with a heart clutched in one hand. Then he fell across the maiden's body and died. The warlock's hairy heart.